I'm Anne, 34, a single mother of two, my daughter Lily, 10, and my son Jason, 8. For as long as I can remember, Sunday dinners at my parents' house have been less about family and more about hierarchy. My parents never said it outright, but the message was always clear. My older sister Diane was their pride, and I was the one who should be grateful just to be invited. As we walked inside, the air grew heavy almost immediately. My mother, Eleanor, stood waiting. She didn't hug the kids. She didn't even say hello. Instead, she shoved a stack of plates into my arms. You can help set the table, Anne. Make yourself useful. Her eyes flicked past me to my children. And you too, don't just stand there. Get napkins from the drawer. Wipe down the chairs. Make yourselves useful too. My father, Richard, appeared long enough to mutter, "Don't drop anything this time," before retreating back into the den. I carried the plates into the dining room, setting them down one by one. Each clink of ceramic against wood felt like punctuation. You're not a guest here. You're staff. Minutes later, the front door opened again, and the whole mood shifted. Diane swept in, 4 years older, perfectly styled, confident as always. She carried herself like she belonged in every room. And in my parents' eyes, she did. "Diane," my father boomed, his face breaking into a grin. My mother rushed forward, arms wide, practically glowing. Her children followed behind. Unlike Lily and Jason, they weren't asked to carry napkins or clean chairs. Instead, they were met with hugs, kisses, and presents, shiny wrapped boxes pulled from a hallway cabinet. "Just a little something for our angels," my mother cooed as they tore into the wrapping. A new soccer ball. A doll with glossy hair. Their squeals filled the room, bouncing off the walls. Jason shuffled in from the kitchen, napkins still in his hands. He froze, staring at the gifts. Lily quietly set the silverware on the table, her eyes flicking toward me. No one offered them anything. Not even a smile. Diane adjusted her bracelet and smirked. "The kids begged to come tonight. They just love being here." Her words were meant to sting, and they did. When it came time to order food, my mother clapped her hands brightly. "All right, darlings, what should we get? Pizza? Burgers? Anything you want." She looked directly at Diane's children. "Cheeseburgers and fries." Her son shouted. "Pizza with extra cheese," her daughter sang, clutching her new doll. My parents laughed indulgently, already confirming the order. Lily and Jason waited. Patient. Hopeful. Jason opened his mouth, then closed it again when no one looked at him. Lily bit her lip, eyes down. The silence stretched. Finally, my mother turned toward me, her lip curling. "Yours can eat scraps." For a moment, the room froze. Diane chuckled, covering her mouth. My father smirked, satisfied. I looked at my children. Lily's face went blank, her shoulders tense. Jason lowered his head, fists clenched so tight his knuckles went pale. Something in me hardened. For years I had smiled through this, swallowing humiliation to keep the peace. But seeing my children shrink beneath it, that was different. I forced my lips into a polite curve, the kind of smile my parents expected. Inside, though, steel was setting in place. That's when I slipped my hand under the table and pulled my phone from my bag. My children sat silently beside me, still waiting for someone to notice them, while my parents laughed with Diane as if we didn't exist. I unlocked the screen and opened a message draft. Just a few words. That was all it would take. One message, and the balance of power at this table would never be the same again. They had no idea what was coming. Diane is 4 years older than me, and for as long as I can remember, she has been the golden child. From the moment she was born, it was as if our parents had decided she was the star of the family and I was the understudy. Everything she touched was praised. Every mistake was forgiven. Every wish was treated like an urgent request. I learned my place young. When I turned 10, I begged for a bicycle. I pictured myself riding down the street with the wind in my hair, the kind of freedom every kid dreams about. On my birthday morning, I tore open the box waiting for me on the kitchen table. Socks. Just plain socks. My mother smiled, sipping her coffee. You needed them, Anne. Practical gifts are better than silly ones. 2 weeks later, Diane wheeled a brand new bike into the driveway. It wasn't her birthday. It wasn't a holiday. She simply wanted one, and she got it. My father stood proudly at her side, clapping as though she had achieved something extraordinary. You deserve it, Diane, he said, snapping pictures while I stood there barefoot in my birthday socks, clapping half-heartedly. That was the pattern. Her needs were always treated like treasures. Mine were chores. The favoritism didn't fade as we grew older, it only hardened into habit. Diane's wedding was a grand event with hundreds of guests, paid for entirely by our parents. I remember standing off to the side, holding Lily, just a baby then, and hearing my mother whisper to a guest, Diane is everything we hoped for in a daughter. My own wedding years earlier had been a small backyard affair, mostly funded by my then-husband's family. My parents gave us a check that barely covered the catering and complained about it for years afterward. And now, even with children of our own, the cycle has repeated. Diane's kids are adored, spoiled with gifts and attention. My children are treated like they should be grateful for leftovers. The walls of my parents' house tell the whole story. Photographs of Diane at every milestone, her dance recitals, her graduation, her wedding, her vacations, cover nearly every wall. Alongside them hang framed photos of her children holding soccer trophies and smiling in school portraits. Lily and Jason's pictures? Nowhere. Their artwork? Dismissed. Last year, Lily drew a family portrait in bright crayon colors, us all together, holding hands beneath a shining sun. She carried it into my mother's living room, proud and hopeful. My mother barely glanced at it before saying, "We can't hang every scribble." A week later, I found it crumpled in the kitchen trash. Jason once asked me quietly, "Why don't Grandma and Grandpa like us?" I froze, unable to give him the honest answer, and instead mumbled, "They just don't show it very well." But even at 8, he knew better. For years, I accepted it. I told myself it was easier to stay quiet, to avoid fights, to let them treat me like background noise. But sitting at that table, watching Lily and Jason lower their heads as history repeated itself, I realized I couldn't excuse it anymore. The same cruelty I endured as a child was now being aimed at them. And unlike me, they had no defenses yet. I whispered to myself, steady and certain, "It ends with me. Tonight." Back in the dining room, the evening rolled on as though nothing cruel had just been said. Diane filled the space with chatter, and my parents soaked up every word. Her daughter had painted a rainbow in art class. "We framed it in the living room," Diane said proudly, tilting her chin just enough to be sure I heard. "How wonderful," my mother replied, clasping her hands. "She's so talented, just like her mother." Her son had scored a single goal during his game on Saturday. "The coach says he has real potential," Diane added, leaning back in her chair like the queen of the table. "Of course he does," my father said, his voice booming with pride. "That boy is a Wilson through and through." Lily and Jason sat quietly, their small hands folded neatly on their laps. Neither of them was asked about their week, their school, or their interests. No one asked about Lily's science project or Jason's spelling tests. They might as well have been invisible. I slid my phone under the table, my thumb steady as I typed, replaced the Wilson order with scraps. It took less than 10 seconds to press send, but in that moment it felt like I had crossed a line I'd never dared before. My pulse thudded once, hard, then steadied. Whatever came next, I was ready. "And," my father said suddenly, turning toward me, "maybe you should take notes tonight. Diane is showing you how to raise children properly." The smirk he gave me was practiced, sharpened over years of small humiliations. Diane laughed softly, waving a hand as if she were being modest. Oh, don't be too harsh on her, Dad. Not everyone can manage a household and children with grace. Her eyes flicked toward me, lips curving in that familiar smug smile. I smiled back, but mine was thin, unreadable. The doorbell rang, breaking the rhythm of their mockery. My father stood, eager, puffing up his chest. Finally. The food. He carried the stack of takeout bags into the room, setting them on the table with exaggerated pride. My mother and Diane leaned forward, ready to pass out the feast. Their voices rose, bright and cheerful, until the first box opened. Confusion first. Then disgust. Instead of cheeseburgers, pizzas, and wings, the bags held boxes of limp lettuce, soggy fries, and chicken bones stripped nearly bare. The smell of old grease filled the air. What the hell is this? My father barked, pawing through the containers. This isn't what we ordered. My mother's face turned red, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. This is garbage. They send us trash. Call them back immediately. She dropped a box onto the table, its greasy bottom leaving a stain on the cloth. Diane poked gingerly at a container of fries, recoiling. This is inedible. Honestly, what kind of restaurant would send food like this? She looked around the table as though waiting for backup. Her children wrinkled their noses. I don't want this, one whined. The other pushed the box away and muttered, it smells bad. The volume in the room rose quickly, complaints tumbling over each other, accusations flung at the delivery driver, at the restaurant, at anyone but themselves. This is unacceptable, my father shouted. I'll never order from them again. Ridiculous, my mother fumed. Do they think they can cheat us? Diane shook her head, her voice tight with rage. Someone's going to hear about this. The chorus of outrage filled the dining room, echoing against the walls. And through it all, I sat still. I reached for my water glass, took a slow sip, and watched. The scene was chaos, absurd in its intensity, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel the sting of their words. I felt only clarity. Then, a sound broke through the shouting, soft, hesitant, and utterly out of place. Laughter. Jason giggled first, a small burst that slipped out before he could stop it. Lily pressed her hand to her mouth, but soon her shoulders shook too. Within seconds, both of them were laughing, real, unrestrained laughter that filled the air louder than my parents' complaints. Why are you laughing? My mother snapped, her head whipping toward them. Neither answered. They didn't need to. Their laughter was enough. I set my glass down, rose from my chair, and pulled my bag over my shoulder. The legs scraped loudly against the floor, silencing the room. For a long second, no one breathed. The hum of the ceiling fan sounded deafening, every tick of its blades counting down a moment I had delayed for years. My hand rested on the back of my chair, steady even though my heart was pounding. My father turned, his face still red from shouting. Where do you think you're going? His voice wasn't just loud, it was practiced authority, the same tone he'd used my whole life when he wanted to end an argument before it began. Jason flinched at the sound, his small shoulders jerking. He glanced up at me, his eyes wide, waiting for me to shrink back the way I always had. Lily reached under the table and grabbed his hand, her lip trembling but her chin lifted. She was holding her breath too. I looked down at them, my children, their faces taut with years of unspoken lessons, that we endure, that we stay quiet, that we survive. And I thought, no more. Not them. Not tonight. I straightened slowly, my voice calm but unshakable. We're leaving. The room erupted at once. You don't walk away from this table, my father roared, slamming his palm against the wood so hard the glasses rattled. After all we do for you, you dare walk out, my mother snapped, her face mottled with fury. Diane's laugh was sharp, brittle. Ungrateful, Anne. You've always been ungrateful. We invite you into this home and you act like a spoiled child. I bent to Jason's level, buttoning his coat one button at a time. My hands were steady now, calmer than they had any right to be. "Come on, love," I said softly. He swallowed hard, then nodded, slipping his arms through the sleeves. Beside us, Lily zipped her jacket with a slow, deliberate motion, her eyes never leaving her grandparents. She looked taller in that moment, her small shoulders squared, as if she had borrowed some of my strength. I brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. "Sit back down this instant," my father barked. His chair screeched as he pushed it back, ready to block the door. But I met his glare head-on. For once, I didn't look away. Behind him, Diane leaned forward, her voice dripping with mockery. "Running off like this won't change who you are, Anne. You'll always be the jealous one, always trying to ruin things for everyone else." I finally looked at her, my face calm, almost serene. "Enjoy your dinner, Diane," I said, nodding toward the greasy boxes still littering the table. "Looks delicious." Her smirk faltered, just for a heartbeat. My father tried to fill the silence, his voice cracking at the edges. "You think you're too good for us? You think you can just walk out?" "Yes," I said simply, my hand tightening on the doorknob. "That's exactly what I think." The silence that followed was heavy, stretching until it snapped. For the first time in years, their words didn't land. They bounced off me like stones against steel. I opened the door and held it wide for my children. The cool night air spilled in, sweeping the heat and noise behind us. Jason slipped his hand into mine, Lily followed close, her chin high. The voices rose again, shouts, insults, threats, but they no longer touched me. I stepped through the doorway, steady as stone. "We're done here," I said, and the door clicked shut with finality. The night was still. The stars blinked faintly overhead, and the driveway stretched quiet before us. Jason exhaled in relief, his small shoulders dropping. Lily let out a laugh, soft, incredulous, like she couldn't quite believe what we had just done. I unlocked the car and helped them climb inside. For a moment, I just stood there, hands on the roof of the car, breathing in the silence. It wasn't just leaving dinner. It was leaving years of swallowing hurt, years of pretending. As I slid into the driver's seat, Jason leaned toward me. "Mom," he said carefully, "are we really not going back?" I glanced at him in the mirror, meeting his wide eyes. "No," I answered firmly. "We're not going back. Not tonight. Maybe not ever." He nodded slowly, a small smile tugging at his lips. Lily caught his hand and squeezed it. The headlights cut across the driveway as I turned the key. My parents' house shrank in the rearview mirror, still lit, still loud, still the same as it had always been. But for us, everything had changed. Lily leaned her forehead against the window, watching the streetlights blur by. Jason sat upright in his seat, his hands folded in his lap, his jaw tight. For a while, the only sound was the steady hum of the engine. "You did nothing wrong," I said finally, keeping my eyes on the road. "Not one thing." Jason shifted but didn't answer. Lily stayed still, her reflection pale in the glass. The silence between us wasn't fear anymore. It was something else, an echo of all the other silences we had lived through, and a doorway into a truth I had carried too long. I was taking my children to the very place my parents had just ordered from, the place they dismissed as nothing more than a delivery service. The truth they never cared to know was that it wasn't just a restaurant to me. It was mine. And it hadn't been handed to me. I had earned it, step by step, year by year, when no one believed I could. I was barely 20 when I tied my first apron and stepped onto a restaurant floor. The shifts were brutal, 10 tables at once, trays stacked high, smiles plastered on no matter how much my feet ached. Customers snapped their fingers, barked orders, and left coins on the table as if they were doing me a favor. At the end of each night, my back burned and my hands shook, but the paycheck in my pocket was too small to cover all the bills. I told myself it was temporary. Then came Lily. Then Jason. Temporary became survival. I worked doubles, sometimes leaving before dawn and stumbling home long after dark. I'd kiss Lily's forehead on my way out and pray she remembered me when I came back. Jason was still a baby, and I'd rock him to sleep before rushing out to catch the late bus. I nearly quit once. A customer screamed, I dropped a tray, and I ended up in the freezer, apron half off, tears cold on my cheeks. Vivian, the owner back then, found me sitting on a crate. She didn't scold. She sat down and said quietly, Anne, you're stronger than you think. Don't give up before you see what you can do. Her words stayed with me. So I kept going. I learned the rhythm of the floor, how to keep an eye on everything at once, how to calm down the angriest tables, how to run food faster than anyone else. I volunteered for the shifts no one wanted, stayed late to clean, came in early to prep. One night, Vivian handed me the keys. You're closing, she said. My hands shook as I locked the doors, but I did it. Walking home afterward, the city quiet around me, I felt taller than I had ever been. The promotions came slowly. Shift leader. Assistant manager. Manager. I learned scheduling, payroll, vendor contracts. I stayed late to fix leaks in the kitchen, to cover when someone didn't show. Each step built on the last. Meanwhile, at home, my parents never noticed. My mother sighed, poor Anne, still waiting tables. My father joked, at least you're useful, you can carry trays at family barbecues. Diane smirked, don't drop anything. They thought they were funny. I never corrected them. I let them believe I was stuck, because telling them the truth would only invite their judgment or, worse, their interference. When Vivian asked me to become her partner, I scraped together every dollar. I skipped meals, patched shoes, kept the lights low at home to save money. Signing that contract felt impossible and exhilarating at the same time. Years later, when Vivian retired, I signed again, this time as the sole owner. The papers felt heavy, but when I stood in the dining room afterward, I knew every blister, every long night, every sacrifice had carried me to that moment. And through it all, my parents stayed blind. They never asked what I did, never cared to know. They thought I was scraping by, when in truth, I was thriving. The road curved, and the familiar glow of my restaurant came into view. The tall windows spilled golden light across the sidewalk, warm and welcoming against the dark. In the rearview mirror, Jason straightened, eyes locked on the glass. Lily pressed her hand to the window, her breath fogging the pain. They knew where we were going. They had always known it was mine. But tonight, it wasn't just my workplace. Tonight, I was opening it to them as something more, our place, our refuge, our proof. I pulled into the lot and cut the engine. For a long moment, I sat in the stillness, staring at the glow. My heart didn't race with fear. It beat steady with anticipation. The moment we stepped inside, warmth wrapped around us like a blanket. The hum of conversation, the soft glow of the lights, the smell of grilled food, it was nothing like the silence we had left behind. Clara spotted us first. She hurried forward, smile wide, her voice warm. Anne. Good evening. And these must be Lily and Jason. She crouched down to their level, her eyes kind. We've been waiting to meet you. My children didn't shrink back this time. They knew this place. But tonight, it wasn't just the restaurant where Mom worked late. Tonight, it was theirs too. Staff bustled around, greeting us with cheerful hellos. A table had already been set near the front windows, polished and waiting. As we slid into our seats, Clara placed menus in front of the kids with a wink. Order whatever you want. No rules tonight. Jason's eyes widened, darting over the pages. Lily's small smile grew until it filled her face. Moments later, plates began to arrive, carried out with quiet ceremony. Burgers stacked high with toppings. Steaks glistening, cooked perfectly. Piles of fries crisp and golden. Fresh bread still steaming from the oven. Then came the sundaes, towering swirls of ice cream dripping with chocolate and caramel, crowned with cherries. Lily giggled as whipped cream smeared across her lip. Jason laughed so hard he nearly tipped his glass. Their laughter filled the room in a way it hadn't in weeks, bright, unburdened, whole. I sat back, letting it wash over me. For once, they weren't waiting quietly while others were served first. For once, they weren't treated as afterthoughts. Tonight, they were celebrated, cherished, seen. Is this magic? Jason whispered as he picked at his sundae, his eyes still wide. I smiled. No, love. This is what it looks like when people treat you the way you deserve. The staff passed by, smiling at the kids as if they were honored guests. No sneers, no dismissals, no cold glares like at my parents' table. Just kindness. Just respect. I thought of the scene we'd left behind, scraps thrown at my children, laughter at their expense. Here, they had more than enough. Plates overflowing, glasses filled without asking, attention given freely. They were finally learning what it felt like to belong at the table. I raised my glass of water, quiet, almost to myself. To us, I whispered. Jason caught it. To us, he said with a grin, clinking his orange soda against mine. Lily giggled, lifting her own glass. The three of us drank together, laughter spilling into the warm air. For the first time in a long time, I felt something settle deep in my chest. Not just relief. Not just pride. A certainty. We didn't need my parents' table. We had built our own. The doors burst open so hard they banged against the wall, making every head in the restaurant turn. Forks paused mid-air, conversations cut off, and suddenly my sanctuary became a stage. My mother, Eleanor, stormed in first, her face twisted with fury, the greasy takeout bag clutched in her fist like evidence at a trial. Where is the manager? She screeched, her voice echoing through the room. This place has some nerve sending garbage instead of proper food. Garbage. To us. Richard stomped in behind her, chest puffed, jaw tight, eyes scanning for someone to intimidate. Disgraceful. He barked. Do you know who we are? We demand the manager this instant. Diane trailed after them, her bracelet glinting as she tugged her children forward. They whined loudly, dragging their feet. I'm hungry, one moaned. I don't want scraps again, the other cried, parroting the insult my mother had thrown at my children not an hour earlier. The staff hesitated, eyes darting toward me. Clara froze mid-stride, torn between greeting my parents and looking to me for direction. Marco, the manager on duty, stepped forward, his voice steady though his eyes flicked toward me. I'm the manager tonight, he said evenly. How can I help you? Eleanor shoved the bag against his chest so hard grease smeared across his shirt. This is what your kitchen sent us. Do you think my family are dogs? Do you think we eat scraps? Her hand trembled, not with weakness but with indignation sharpened by years of being obeyed. I want the owner. Bring me the person in charge right now. Marco glanced at me once, then nodded. Of course, he said. The owner is here. He gestured toward my table. This is Ann Wilson, the sole owner of the restaurant. The silence that followed was suffocating. My parents stared at me as if I had suddenly grown another face. My mother's lips parted, then closed again. Richard blinked, once, twice, as though the words hadn't computed. What? Eleanor rasped finally, her voice thin, cracking under the weight of disbelief. I rose slowly, folding my napkin with deliberate care before setting it beside my plate. My heels clicked against the polished floor as I crossed the space. My steps were steady, not rushed, not hesitant, as though I had been preparing for this exact walk my entire life. I stopped in front of them, the bag still clutched in my mother's fist, grease staining her manicured nails. I let a small smile curl across my lips. Funny, I said softly, but loud enough to carry, how scraps taste different when you're the ones eating them. Eleanor recoiled as though slapped. Richard's face darkened instantly, his jaw clenching, his voice rising into a growl. Don't you dare speak to us like that. You think owning some little diner makes you better than your family? I tilted my head, calm. Better? No. Independent? Absolutely. Diane gave a shaky laugh, too loud, brittle at the edges. You don't expect us to believe this, do you? You own this place? She turned quickly, searching the staff for denial. She's lying. She has to be lying. She's always been desperate, always jealous. Tell them, Anne, admit it. I didn't flinch. My silence was answer enough. Eleanor's voice rose, jagged and frantic. This is impossible. You could never. Her words cut off when her daughter tugged her sleeve. Mom, the little girl whispered, eyes wide, is she really the boss? The question pierced the air sharper than any insult. Diane's face faltered, her smirk crumbling. Her son crossed his arms, nodding with quiet certainty. She is. Look, everyone here knows it. Richard tried to thunder over the moment. Family comes first, Anne. You think money changes that? You think this place makes you bigger than us? You owe us respect. I drew a steady breath, let it sit in my chest, and then answered evenly. Respect is earned. And tonight, you've earned nothing. Eleanor's hands shook, the bag trembling in her grasp. For the first time I could remember, her voice failed her. Diane's lips moved, but no words came. Richard's glare wavered, the weight of authority he'd always carried slipping, cracking. I crouched down to where Lily and Jason sat, brushing Jason's hair gently off his forehead. Ready to go home, loves? Jason's eyes shone as he nodded. Lily slipped her small hand into mine, her back straight, proud in a way I had never seen her here before. I stood again, meeting the eyes of the people who had spent a lifetime diminishing me. My voice was calm, certain. You sneered at my children for eating scraps, I said. But I built a life where they never have to beg for a place at the table. You never asked what I was doing with my life because you didn't care. But here's your answer. I turned without waiting for their reply. Gathering my children's hands, I walked toward the door. Behind me, Eleanor called my name, Richard cursed, Diane shrieked something about betrayal. Their voices tangled together, accusations, venom, demands, but they were just noise now, hollow against the truth standing in front of them. I didn't slow down. I didn't look back. That night, my phone buzzed with messages, the family group chat exploding, their rage spilling into digital words. By the time Lily and Jason were asleep, my phone hadn't stopped buzzing for nearly an hour. It rattled on the nightstand like a wasp trapped in a glass, each vibration stacked on the last until it became almost comical. I sat beside Jason's bed first, watching his chest rise and fall. He stirred, rubbed his eyes, and mumbled, "Best dinner ever, Mom," before sinking back into sleep. On the other side of the room, Lily whispered through the dark, "Can we go back there tomorrow?" I smiled, tucking the blanket around her shoulders. "As many times as you want, sweetheart." When both were breathing steadily, I stepped into the hallway, closed their door, and finally picked up the phone. The screen was flooded with notifications. The family group chat glowed like a warning sign. I opened it. The first message was from my mother. Her words leapt off the screen. "How dare you humiliate us like that in public? We raised you better than this." A second message followed almost instantly. "You embarrassed your whole family tonight." My father had piled on. His tone came through even in text, blunt, heavy-handed. "So you own a restaurant. Big deal. Don't forget who gave you a roof and food when you were nothing. You owe us respect." Diane's messages were longer, frantic, dripping with venom. "You ruined everything, Anne. My children are asking why you're the boss and not me. They're confused. You've poisoned their view of me. Do you know what you've done?" Another popped up before I even finished the first. "You stole the spotlight like you always wanted. You made a fool out of us." I scrolled, and more kept coming. My mother again, ungrateful. After all the sacrifices we made. Then my father, Without us, you'd be nowhere. Don't forget where you came from. It was endless. Message after message, guilt and blame typed out in rapid fire. The same script I had heard my entire life, now digitized. Years ago, words like these would have gutted me. I would have sat frozen, guilt swelling in my chest, desperate to explain myself, to prove I wasn't the selfish failure they claimed I was. But tonight was different. Tonight their outrage didn't pierce me. As I scrolled, I realized each accusation was recycled. My mother's talk of sacrifice, wasn't that what she said when I got a scholarship, as if my success owed itself to her? My father's warnings about forgetting where I came from, he'd said the same when I first moved out, clutching freedom like contraband. Diane's complaint about me stealing the spotlight, I'd heard that too, when I sang at my own graduation and my applause lasted a second too long. It was all the same refrain, repeated over decades. Only now, I finally heard it for what it was, fear. Fear that I had escaped the box they built for me. Fear that I had broken their control. A part of me wanted to answer back. I could have typed paragraph after paragraph, listing the nights I went without sleep, the years I carried bills on my shoulders, the sacrifices no one saw. I could have thrown their hypocrisy back at them, line for line. But as my thumbs hovered over the keyboard, a calm spread through me. Why explain myself to people who had never wanted to understand? Why shout into a void that only echoed their own voices back? I let the phone rest in my lap and leaned back into the couch. Their chaos filled the screen, but it didn't touch me. Not anymore. For the first time, I understood that silence could be a weapon too. The phone buzzed again. Another wave of messages. More blame. More threats. More of the same. And then one final text from my mother appeared at the bottom. Don't burn bridges, Anne. You'll regret it. The words glared back at me, but they no longer had claws. I stared at them for a long moment, then pressed my finger against the screen. Delete. The chat disappeared. The buzzing stopped. The silence that followed was profound. I set the phone face down and let the quiet wash over me. Their voices had filled every corner of my life for so long. Tonight, for the first time, there was space for Lily's laughter, for Jason's questions, for the hum of a restaurant built from my sweat and stubbornness. Space for me. I closed my eyes, inhaled deeply, and whispered into the quiet, "No, Mom. I'll never regret this." Tomorrow would come with its own battles, but tonight was mine. Morning sunlight poured through the curtains, soft and golden, spilling across the floorboards. For the first time in years, I woke without a knot in my stomach. No buzzing phone, no dread of what sharp words might come next, no pressure to perform for people who would never applaud. Just quiet. I lay still for a moment, letting the silence sink in. It was new, but it wasn't empty. It was peaceful. In the kitchen, Lily shuffled in with her hair tangled from sleep, rubbing her eyes. Jason followed close behind, clutching his blanket like a shield, though his steps were lighter than usual. They slid into chairs at the table, watching me expectantly. "Pancakes?" I asked. They both nodded eagerly, and for the first time I noticed how much anticipation could light up their faces. Not the careful, waiting look they wore at their grandparents' table, but the genuine glow of children who knew they were safe. As I whisked the batter, the smell of vanilla and butter filled the room. I thought of the last words my mother had texted me, "Don't burn bridges. You'll regret it." I used to believe that. I used to think family bridges had to be preserved at any cost, even if walking across meant blistered feet and smoke in my lungs. But what good is a bridge that only leads you back into fire? Maybe burning it wasn't destruction at all. Maybe it was safety. The first pancake hissed in the skillet, edges curling golden. Jason leaned forward, chin resting on his hands, eyes tracking every flip as though it were magic. Lily hummed quietly under her breath, swinging her legs against the chair, her gaze fixed on me. I thought about childhood, how often I was left with the leftovers of affection. Socks on my 10th birthday while Diane wheeled her new bicycle down the driveway. An orange in my Christmas stocking while hers overflowed with gadgets and toys. A perfect report card brushed aside as expected, while her crooked flower painting was framed in the hallway. As a teenager, I learned to stop expecting anything. My parents never came to my school play, though they were front row for Diane's recital. When I sang at graduation, my applause lasted only a heartbeat before my father cleared his throat and changed the subject back to her. The pancake flipped in the air and landed neatly back in the pan. Jason clapped softly, as though he couldn't help himself. Lily giggled, covering her mouth, then leaned across the table and whispered, "We should make pancakes every Sunday instead." I slid the first stack onto their plates, syrup glistening as it pooled across the edges. They grinned, digging in, syrup dripping onto their hands and chins. Jason ate with the hunger of someone who finally believed there would always be enough. Lily took smaller bites, savoring them, humming again between mouthfuls. "Mom," Jason said suddenly, pausing mid-bite, "do we have to go back to Grandma and Grandpa's anymore?" I froze for a moment, spatula in my hand. The question was so plain, so small, and yet it carried all the weight of the night before. I set the pan down and looked at him, really looked at him. "No, love," I said softly. "We don't have to." Relief flooded his face, and Lily let out a tiny sigh, almost a laugh. She pushed her empty plate forward, syrup streaked across it like a painting, and said, "Then let's stay here. This is better." I smiled, placing another pancake in front of her. "Yes," I whispered. "This is better." Family wasn't about blood. Family was about who showed up. Who listened. Who celebrated your victories and carried you through the failures. My parents had chosen Diane as their pride and me as their shadow. But I had chosen Lily and Jason as my light. And they had chosen me as their home. Later, I drove past the restaurant. The windows glowed in the late afternoon, customers laughing inside, staff moving with practiced rhythm. The place thrived without me there, which meant I had done it right. It was strong enough to stand on its own. I sat in the car for a long time, just watching. My phone lay silent in the cup holder. The family chat was gone, erased. The bridge behind me was ash, and I felt lighter for it. I thought again of all the years of cast-offs, the presents that never came, the applause that never lasted, the meals I skipped to keep my children fed. What had once been crumbs had become bricks. What once felt like nothing had become the foundation of everything. That night, when I tucked Lily into bed, she asked softly, "Mom, are we going back to Grandma and Grandpa's next Sunday?" I shook my head. "No, love. We don't need to." Jason rolled over, half asleep, and muttered, "Good." I kissed their foreheads, lingered in the doorway, and let the silence sink deep. They tried to leave us with scraps. Instead, I built a feast. And my children will never hunger for love again. Not while I'm alive. Not while I'm their mother. Looking back now, it's almost surreal. For years, I thought I had to beg for space at my parents' table, only to realize I had been building one of my own all along. They wanted me small, grateful for whatever crumbs of attention they threw my way. What they didn't realize was that those years taught me resilience, and resilience became the foundation of everything I have now. That's the real heart of this story. Not revenge for revenge's sake, but the choice to finally walk away. To protect my children. To build a life where love isn't rationed, where belonging isn't conditional, and where family is defined by kindness, not bloodlines. If you were in my shoes, would you have revealed the truth that night, or kept it hidden forever? I'd love to hear what you think. If this story struck a chord with you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. And share your thoughts in the comments, I read them all. Because in the end, the stories that shape us most are the ones we live through, and survive to tell.